let's talk about the highs and lows of all things books and reading so far in 2025. I know we're well into July now, but I have never done this tag before, and it's been a while since I've sat down and talked about my books and my reading. I thought, why not use this tag to do that? To start off, let's talk about reading goals and where we're at with that. So I set a goal of 100 books to read this year, and the reason I set it so high is because I normally read graphic novels as well as listen to audiobooks, so those two things tend to contribute to the higher number of books that I read per year, but I only end up reading 34 books by the end of June. So I am well behind my reading goal. I underestimated just how time consuming uni was going to be. So for those who don't know, I recently went back to studying and it's really competitive. Because of that, reading has been put on the back burner as well as making content. But reading is still a really great joy of mine. I don't think I ever stopped reading since I started as a child. I definitely had years where I read a lot less than I normally do, but I never really stopped. So reading is still a priority for me. And also just a personal thing, I don't like to change my reading goal. I think I did it once and I just hated it. I changed it so that I could complete it, but then it never felt like a full completion to me. And everyone is different. For me personally, I just am happy to have it not completed. I just want it to be the same as what I started the year off with. But I have accepted that I probably won't meet it, and that's okay. So let's just get into the book tag. The first question is, what is the best book you've read so far? And for that, I'm going to give it to We Used to Live Here. I rated this book 5 stars. It was my second 5-star read of the year, and I was absolutely blown away by this book. I was completely surprised how much I liked it, mainly because it is a horror book, and I am not a horror fan at all. I don't watch horror, I don't read horror. I do read thriller books, but this book definitely leans more towards the horror genre than it does the thriller. So I can't remember exactly why I borrowed this book and why I decided to give it a chance. I didn't know anything about it going in. I'd heard some reviews about it, and I think I was probably curious enough to give it a try. It is a haunted house story, and it starts off with the new owner of the house getting a knock on a door one night. It's a family. The dad of the family asks if he can take his family on a tour around the place because it's where he grew up and they were passing through. Obviously, it's a little bit weird and she's by herself. Her partner's out, so she's super hesitant, but eventually lets them in because she can't think of a reason to say no, and the story unfolds from there. This book gripped me from the very first page and just would not let go, and the ending, I think I didn't stop thinking about it for months afterwards. I was on Reddit to read all the theories, and actually this book started off as a Reddit short story, so that's a pretty cool fun fact I discovered. I couldn't stop thinking about it, and I love it when any form of media that I consume then consumes me and I can't stop thinking about it. I have to read all the theories, I have to watch all the edits, I have to do all these things just to be a part of the world still. I think that's just a sign of something that's super engaging and captivating, and yeah, this was one of them. So I couldn't stop thinking about it for a long time afterwards. I have my own theories of what I think the ending means and what I think the rest of the book means as well, but I love the fact that it generated so much discussion. The other thing I really loved about We Used to Live Here was that I didn't feel annoyed by the main character's decisions. In a lot of thriller books, and I know I said this is more horror, but kind of on the same vein, I get really frustrated with some of the decisions that the characters make, and you can tell that the author uses certain devices just to progress the story along rather than having it make sense in the context of the story. And I hate when that happens because it feels quite lazy, and then I just get annoyed by the characters even though it's, obviously the author's decision to do all this. In this case, I didn't feel like that because I thought that everything that happened made sense in the context of the story and in the context of the character's personality as well. And because of that, it was more believable and I was able to fully immerse myself in the story. I think I heard rumors that there was going to be a sequel, so I'm really hoping that is true. To be honest, I am pretty happy with how it ended. It's still pretty open-ended. There's still so many questions left, but I think that's the beauty of it. I don't tend to like when that happens, but in this case, it works really well. And I think for certain books, it's just the way it is, and we don't need to know the answer, and that's the whole point. But I would be so keen if there was a sequel. I also think there's a movie adaptation of this coming out, but I don't know if that's still ongoing. So the next question is, what is the best sequel you've read this year? And I've got 2 answers for this. The first is probably The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. This is not technically a sequel, but it was the next book I was up to in the Hercule Poirot series by Agatha Christie. I'm going to be honest, I haven't been having a great time with this series so far. The first couple books, they're not her well-known works, and I just didn't really enjoy them, to be honest. I DNF'd a couple, and I know that I haven't reached the big names like Murder on the Orient Express and Death in the Nile, but I just was kind of losing a bit of steam. This book definitely renewed my interest. It really took me by surprise. The whole book itself just felt like a step up from her other works, but then the last bit or so really amped it up. I think it was about a 4-star read up until this certain part, and then it became a 5-star. And I normally never give 5 stars so late into a book, but yeah, I was just obsessed with how this book turned out, and it was my first 5-star read of the year as well. And the second answer to this question is Catching Fire. I reread this trilogy back in March. It'd been over a decade since I'd read this, and the series was even better than I remembered, and I think having an adult perspective on the series really helped. I do have a video of me rereading the series on my channel, so if you want more in-depth thoughts, please check that out. I just think this book does a really good job at following up on The Hunger Games, even though I prefer The Hunger Games and I love that book so much, which I'm not sure if that's an unpopular opinion or not. I feel like everyone likes Catching Fire a little bit more. I think that just goes to show how good of a sequel this actually is. It's not a filler book. It really does a good job at keeping to the core themes of the book while also progressing the story along. Everything feels really relevant in the story. Every scene, every interaction just goes to further progress the dynamics that Suzanne Collins wants you to see. I really liked all the scenes of everyone back in the district after the games, especially the scenes that weren't in the movie, because there were so many that I completely forgot about. So it was fun to have an insight into that. There's just a lot more development with Peter, Haymitch, Katniss's mom, Primrose, everyone, and especially Madge as well than I remembered there being. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. I felt like I was reading a whole different book. I just wish that the games were longer, even though this is probably wrong to say because it's meant to be like a horror show. I thought the games were so interesting and captivating. It's a testament to Suzanne Collins' writing, how entertaining it was. And I loved the creativity of the clock arena and also with the rebellion happening in the background as well. I thought all of that was just so interesting, and I wished that part was a little bit longer. I understand it happening quickly kind of adds to the confusion in Katniss's mind, especially since it's in her point of view. But just from a personal standpoint, I just really enjoyed that part of it and wished it was a little bit longer. And for the new releases that I haven't gotten a chance to read yet, there is Vera Wong's Guide to Snooping, which is the second book in the Vera Wong series. I read the first book last year and I really enjoyed it. It was so charming, so wholesome. I listened to the audiobook of it and I really enjoyed the narrator. So a part of me wants to continue it on audiobook, but at the moment I only have the ebook available on my Libby, well, on hold. The audiobook isn't an option yet, so I'm not sure whether that's still in progress or whether there just won't be an audiobook of it. So I'll see how long I can hold out. Like I said, it's on hold on my Libby at the moment, so we'll see once I get to it. The other book is The Emperor of Gladness by Ocean Vuong. I have been hearing such good things about this book and I really love him as a writer. His prose is just so beautiful. I really enjoyed his previous book, On Earth We Are Briefly Gorgeous. I'm looking forward to this book. I think the only thing is that I'm worried about how sad it's going to be. I briefly know what it is about and it sounds sad, and I feel like, especially given his first book, there are definitely going to be sad parts to the story. I'm just curious as to how it's going to be balanced by lighter moments. I know there are some authors who kind of do a balance of both, but overall leans happier or overall leans sadder, and I feel like Ocean Vuong probably leans sadder and I'm more of a happier person. That's the only thing that's kind of putting me on pause at the moment, because I feel like I've been reading a lot of sad books and I want to read more lighthearted ones. I am still really keen to read it at some point. And then we also have Sunrise on the Reaping, which I have bought. I actually bought this and Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which I'll talk about later. I haven't actually read ballads yet. I think when Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes came out, I wasn't really into the whole Hunger Games thing as much, or like I just wasn't really kind of feeling it. So it was easy to forget about it. And I think also I wasn't online a lot, so I didn't hear a lot of talk about it. But this one has gotten so much hype. Before reading this, I wanted to reread the trilogy and I also wanted to read the Snow prequel first. And I'm really glad I did that. I read the trilogy now, I read the prequel. The reason I haven't picked this up yet, one, I've been a little bit busy with uni as I was saying, but also I've just been seeing people crying so much over this and I know it's going to devastate me, especially knowing what I already know about the outcome of these games and parts of the games. Obviously the book is going to have so much more than what we've been privy to in the Hunger Games. The only thing I am curious about is how much of the stuff in here is like fan service and how much was actually planned by Suzanne Collins earlier on. I don't really mind either way. The reason I bring it up is because I've seen a lot of theories on TikTok and on Reddit connecting things just because they can, rather than it being actual connections. Things like Woody Harrelson's acting in certain scenes in the first movie, and also Donald Sutherland's acting, and those things were done way before the prequels were ever released. So I feel like they were things that they added to the story themselves, and then maybe Suzanne Collins used that as inspiration for some of the things in the prequel. But then people are like, wow, this was here all along, and it's not true, and I can't get behind that because I'm pretty sure it's not, and that's okay. It's okay for things not to have been connected from the very start. It doesn't diminish Suzanne Collins as a writer because she is very skilled, and rereading the trilogy really reminded me of that. Anyway, just a little mini rant because I've just seen a lot of that. It's okay to acknowledge that things are coincidental and it works out nicely. It doesn't have to be planned from the start. Anyway, let's move on to the next question, and just a quick pause. I'm sorry about the lighting. I think it's going in and out a little bit. It's a little bit dark now, but hopefully the sun will come back out soon and it's not, too gloomy to watch. So the next question is most anticipated releases for the second half of the year. I'm not usually good at keeping up with new releases, but these are the ones I have seen other people talk about that's on my radar. We have Every Step She Takes by Alison Cochrane. I love Alison Cochrane's other works. I've read The Charm Offensive and Kiss Her Once for Me, and I really, really enjoyed both. And then when I was looking this up, I actually realized that she released a book last year that I forgot about and I haven't read yet. So I definitely need to get to that before this new one. I thought I'd already read all her released books. Apparently I haven't. The other book is We Met Like This by Casey West. So I've read a lot of Casey West's books back in my younger days and I really enjoyed them, but mainly the earlier ones, I feel like the more I read, the more it felt like a lot of her books were getting quite rushed and it didn't have the same feel as the earlier ones. But this is an adult debut novel, so I am really curious as to what she does with this and how it differs from her YA books. And then we also have We Love You, Bunny by Mona Awad. I really enjoyed Bunny. I thought it was a great fun book. I read it in like less than 24 hours. It's a fever dream of a book, really, really enjoyable. You kind of just have to go with it. This is one of those books that you don't really need to know everything and it works out so much better because of it. I'm curious as to what the sequel is going to be like. I don't think it needed a sequel and I'm not sure why it has one. I feel like maybe because the first book got so much attention. I have no idea what the sequel is going to be about, but I'm hoping it lives up to its hype. For books that don't really need a sequel, I'm wary when it does get one, but I'm going to keep an open mind because I enjoyed the first one so much. And then very recently, I saw that ML Rio has another book coming out called Hot Wax. I really enjoyed If We Were Villains, and I haven't read Graveyard Shift yet. I was really keen for Graveyard Shift actually when I heard about it, but then I started hearing a lot of mixed reviews, especially because of how it ended, and I haven't picked it up because of it. It is a novella, so it's a short read, so I should just read it, and I definitely will before I read this one, but I'm just cautious now because of those mixed reviews. And then for the next question, it is what is the biggest disappointment? And unfortunately, it is Watermoon. I am so sad that this is the answer to this question because I've been looking forward to this book for so long. I started seeing reviews of this arc last year and it immediately went on my TBR. I had a feeling that I was going to enjoy it so much. It sounded whimsical, it sounded cozy, it sounded like everything right up my alley, and then it wasn't. I have so much to say about this book, so I'm trying to gather my thoughts so it doesn't turn too rambly or too ranty, but ultimately it comes down to the execution of this book was just sorely lacking. I could see what the author wanted to do with this, and there is no doubt that the author is so creative, especially with her world building, the ambiance, the vibrance, all of that was there, but the storyline itself and the characters and the writing just did not work at all. The writing was very, it sounds bad to say this, and honestly, what do I know? But it read really amateurish. There was so much telling, not showing. Like at one point, the dialogue had so many he said, she said, he said, she said, when there was a conversation that I ended up counting how many saids there were within a couple of lines. And there was just way too many. It just really detracted from the feel of the story because the writing itself just felt so stop and start. It was quite weak. And that was very obvious because there was so much that the story wanted to say and the writing really let it down. And then to add to that, just the way that the storyline progressed, the way that the characters were introduced, the way they talked to each other, all of that just didn't work. You're never really given a chance to bask in any of the story. So as soon as you're introduced to something new, you're immediately taken to somewhere else before being able to really grasp where the story is going. This was sad because, like I said, the world building, the atmosphere was so great. Everything was so whimsical and interesting to read about, but you're given maybe a couple of pages to take it in, and then you just like moved along immediately to something else. And then it also made the story hard to really get immersed in, and also made the characters' motivations and goals harder to connect with. You don't really get to feel what the characters are going through because you're just told what they're feeling. You're taken from one scene to the other way too quickly. People have mentioned that the insta love wasn't really for them, but for me it was more than just insta love. It was this character comes into the life of another one and immediately is like, I'm gonna help you, with no real motivation or reason for doing so. So when you don't give characters realistic motivations, you lose the reader's investment. I didn't believe in what the character was saying, so I didn't believe in the characters. I just never got invested into the story enough to really care for the characters and care for where the story was going. I was so excited for this book and it really let me down. And then for the biggest surprise, I'll probably give it to Dungeons and Drama. This was not on my radar at all. It seemed like a cute book, a cute little YA romance, but it wasn't on my TBR or anything. I wasn't really drawn to it. The audiobook was available. I needed a new one and I decided to just pick it up for something fun. And it was fun, but it also had a lot more heart and depth to it than I was expecting. I also really loved the gaming and theatre scenes being explored in this book, and they weren't used as like the punchlines for typical high school clique drama. Like there wasn't the whole like popular people bullying the nerds and the geeks or whatever. It was just like that's what the characters were interested in and that's just the way it was. I don't know in American high schools whether it's actually realistic or not what shows and movies depict, but I just appreciated the fact that they didn't use that cliche storyline. It had its own drama, its own problems, but yeah, it didn't need to resort to cliches to move the story along. I really enjoyed it. I really loved the characters, loved the story, and everything was just, it was cute. It was nice. I don't think it's a standout book or anything like that, but it did surprise me in how much I enjoyed it. And then for the next question, new favorite author, whether a debut author or a new to me author. And for me, I would say probably Caroline O'Donoghue, who wrote The Rachel Incident. This was the first book I have read of hers. I listened to the audiobook and I really, really enjoyed it. I wouldn't say she's my new favorite author. I know that's the question, but I haven't read enough of her works to say that, but I am now really keen to read more of her stories because I really enjoyed her writing and how she really made me care so much about the characters and what was happening. I am not a litfic girly. I know a lot of people are, but for me, the tensions that are usually explored in litfics aren't the types of tensions that I enjoy reading about. I feel like it's always about someone making a mistake and they're just waiting to face the consequences of their actions. If there is tension and it's confrontational, that's fine as long as it's all out in the open. But at least for the litfics that I've read, it feels like you're just waiting for something to happen and for the fallout to begin. And I don't like that. But this book really exceeded all my expectations. Based on the summary, I really didn't expect to like it, but I'd read so many good reviews about it. I had a lot of mutuals who really enjoyed this book, so I felt like I had to give it a chance. And the audiobook was available for me. The narrator is Irish as well, so that was fun. Just wasn't expecting to like this litfic novel as much as I did. I think one of the main reasons why is because it felt really subversive to typical litfic tension drama, like the tension I was talking about before. And because of that, I was able to actually enjoy the story and go along for the ride. I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop, even though there were definitely plot lines where you are waiting for the other shoe to drop. It didn't make me feel like that. And I think that's a testament to how well Caroline O'Donoghue writes. And that's why I am so keen to read more from her. I also really enjoyed the two main characters that were in this book. I loved the relationship between them, their dynamic, and even though they were pretty flawed and made a lot of mistakes, I was still rooting for them. And I don't need likable characters to like a book, but I definitely need to root for them in some way. And I think the author does a great job at making you want to root for them while also understanding that they aren't perfect. And then for the question, newest fictional crush, I don't think I'm going to answer this one because I don't really get fictional crushes. I love that for people who do, but it's not really my thing. So the next one is newest favorite character. And for this, I'm going to say Sophia from the Passenger duology. This is the second book in the duology, Wayfarer, because she's more of a prominent character in this one. I'm pretty sure my review for this is just that I love her and I would die for her. From the moment she's first introduced, she's not meant to be likable, but you can tell immediately that there is so much more to her than meets the eye. And I was immediately curious as to learn more about who she was, why she was the way she is, her motivations, etc. And I'm really glad that the second book does explore that. Honestly, I didn't love the two main characters that much. I mean, they were like okay people, but I didn't really like their romance. So anything to do with them really dragged down the story a bit for me. And I think the only reason why I kept going and what made the book better for me was having Sophia there. I think without her, I probably wouldn't have liked this duology as much as I did. It's actually getting a little dark now and I'm worried about the quality of the video. So I think I'm going to pause there and I'm going to answer the questions when there is more light. Alright, so we're continuing the video now, more light. The next question of the tag is, what are the books that made you cry? I cry really easily at books, TV shows, movies, so I don't really use the metric of whether I've cried or not to measure whether a book was actually good or impactful for me. I will list the books that I have cried to so far. So out of the 34 books that I've read, 7 of them made me cry. And when I list them, I'm going to put my rating for each one up as well, so you can see the range of ratings and how I felt about the book. Celestial Monsters, Passenger, Gwen and Art Are Not in Love, The Hunger Games, Mockingjay, Honey and Spice, and Just for the Summer. Speaking of Just for the Summer, I didn't mention this earlier in my books that disappointed me because Watermoon was probably the biggest disappointment, but I just wanted to talk quickly about Just for the Summer as well. Even though I didn't rate this super low, I was slightly disappointed about how much I loved the first 2 books of this trilogy and then was really let down by this third book. I felt like everything I loved about the first 2 weren't present in this third book, and it had a lot more modern references and slang than the other 2 did, and that really took me out of the reading experience. Things like TikTok lingo and certain brand mentions like Starbucks, the excessive use of Starbucks, and also didn't feel that emotionally connected with the characters. And because of that, I didn't root for the couple. I was super drawn in with the first 2 books, Part of Your World and Yours Truly. And especially with the first book, it had all the tropes that I normally do not like. And yet I fell so deeply in love with that book. For this third one, it just didn't hit the same. Honestly, sometimes I forget that I read this book and I only just remembered because I was reading out the list of books that made me cry. But yeah, that was probably another slightly disappointing read for the year. Now for the next question, it's books that made you happy. I feel like this question is a little bit hard to answer because I mean, the act of reading makes me happy. But in terms of what books actually, put a smile on my face, I would say the one that made me a little bit giddy the whole time was probably Gwen and Art Are Not in Love. It was a bit like reading a fan fiction and it gave me the same feelings. That book probably meets the prompt the most. Doesn't necessarily mean it was the best written book I've ever read, but it definitely brought a smile to my face and I just loved reading about the shenanigans that the characters got into. And now for the most beautiful book you bought. I don't tend to buy a lot of books. I prefer to borrow my books from the library just because I don't have much space at home and I always feel like it's such a waste if I don't end up liking the book. So I prefer to borrow it first just to see how I feel, and if I end up really loving it and really wanting my own copy, then that's when I will go out and buy it. Sometimes though, I have a feeling I'm going to really love a book or I'm going to annotate it a lot, and in those cases I go out and buy the book. First up we have Watermoon. I did talk about this earlier in the video. I really thought I was going to love this, and again that's why it was one of the most disappointing books I've read this year because of how beautiful it is and my feeling that I was going to enjoy it. I really wanted a copy on my shelf. Even though I didn't end up loving it, I still think the cover is gorgeous. I can't stop looking at it. I love the little details on it as well. And I don't know if it's easy to tell or not, but there are little like embellishments, I guess you could say, where there are like water drops and the title itself is bumped up a little bit. I just really love the look of that and I love the color palette as well. Overall, just a gorgeous book, even though it was a disappointing read. It is one of the prettier books that I own. The other pretty book I bought this year is The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I love this edition of the Hunger Games books. I was really tempted to buy the trilogy in this edition as well, just because they were so beautiful. But because I already have my own copy, I just couldn't justify buying these covers as well. I might change my mind in the future. I heavily annotated my copies of The Hunger Games already. So if I want to buy copies without any markings in them, I will buy these in the future. But I just love the details, like the edges of these pages, also the actual design. Ooh. at the start of each chapter as well. It's just so pretty. I'm obsessed, and I'm really glad I have this copy. And then for the last question of the tag, it's books that I want to read before the end of 2025. So I did create a list of 25 books to read in 2025, but I've been refining and changing that list all year. I still haven't settled on it fully. There are some books on there that I definitely want to read. I also want to make a huge dent in my physical TBR, and that is also not really happening. Combine that with the 25 books in 2025, and it's a huge list of books that I don't know if I'm going to get the time to get to. It's hard for me to stick to TBRs because I am a huge mood reader. I don't want to say for sure what books I definitely want to read by the end of the year. I will say though that there are 2 authors I wanted to try for sure this year because I've been putting them off for so long, and I won't talk about the books in this video just yet because I read them in the second half of the year, start of July, but they are Frederick Bachman and Emily Henry. I really wanted to read my first books by them, and I'm really glad I did. It will be in a reading vlog coming up soon, and spoiler for the video, I guess, I did rate them at least a 4-star. I was really happy with them. I just had hyped up the author so much in my mind. I just had a feeling that I would really enjoy their style, and I'm glad that that assumption was met. There are also 2 other books that I want to get to. One is The Sunshine Court, the 4th book in the All for the Game series. I want to do a reread of those original books before I move on to this one. I don't think I really need to do a reread, but I just have a feeling I might enjoy it more. I was really looking forward to this last year. I was so excited to find out that it was coming out. I've been really shipping Jeremy and Jean before this book ever kind of came into existence. So I was so happy when it was announced that Nora Sakavic had written a book about them. But I think my excitement for it hyped me up too much, and then I ended up putting it off because I was worried about being disappointed. But I think this year is finally the year to get to it. And I did mention earlier with the 2025 releases question that I wanted to read Sunrise on the Reaping. This is also another book I definitely want to get to by the end of the year. Now that I've read the trilogy and I've read Ballad of Songbird and Snakes, it is time for Sunrise on the Reaping. That is my tentative TBR for the rest of 2025. Like I said, the rest will probably come based on how I'm feeling, my mood, etc. And yeah, that is it. That is the mid-year freakout book tag. Please answer these questions yourself if you like to in the comments. Let me know what you're looking forward to reading, your highs and lows so far of the year. And as always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.